The gleaming halls of Station Alpha 9 stretched endlessly before Emma as she wheeled her small travel case behind her. Her footsteps echoed against the polished metal floor, mixing with the soft hum of the station's life support systems. The artificial gravity felt almost perfect, just a tiny bit lighter than Earth's pull, making each step feel slightly bouncy. The station's main corridor bustled with activity. Tall, short, wide, and thin aliens of various species moved about their business. Some floated on gravity platforms, while others walked on multiple legs or glided on what looked like cushions of air. Emma tried not to stare, but it wasn't easy. Even after 3 months of preparation on Earth, seeing so many different alien species in one place felt overwhelming. A holographic arrow appeared in front of her, pointing left. Human exchange student Emma Thompson, your quarters are this way, announced the station's AI in a pleasantly neutral voice. Emma followed the arrow, watching as it changed color from blue to green when she moved in the right direction. The exchange program had started just 6 months after Earth joined the Galactic Federation. The Academy had chosen 50 human students from around the world, and Emma still couldn't believe she was one of them. Her parents back in Boston had been so proud. Their daughter, one of the first humans to study advanced sciences alongside the galaxy's brightest minds. As she walked, a group of tall, blue-skinned aliens passed by, their 8 eyes blinking in sequence as they glanced at her. One of them whispered something, and the others made a sound that might have been laughter. Emma kept her head high and continued walking. She remembered the orientation officer's words. "You're not just a student. You're Earth's ambassador." The corridor opened into a vast circular chamber with a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadows. Streams of students flowed in and out of various passages, each marked with holographic signs in multiple languages. Emma stopped to check her direction, and something bumped into her from behind. "Oh, my apologies," said a voice. Emma turned to find herself face to face with what looked like a floating crystal. It pulsed with soft purple light as it spoke. "You must be one of the new humans. I'm a third-year quantum physics student. The name's Light that sings in darkness, but you can call me Bright." Emma smiled, relieved to find someone friendly. "I'm Emma. And yes, I just arrived. Actually, I'm a bit lost. The AI said to go left, but there are 6 left passages." Bright pulsed with amusement. "The AI can be imprecise sometimes. Which block are you assigned to?" Emma checked her tablet. "Block H7, room 4221. "Ah, you're in the oxygen breather section. That's the 3rd passage on the left. I can show you. I'm heading that way to the library." They moved through the crowd together, Bright occasionally emitting soft chimes that seemed to make other students move aside. "So," Bright asked, "what's your field of study?" "Advanced computing and neural networks," Emma replied. "Back on Earth, I was working on improving AI response patterns." Bright flickered rapidly. "Fascinating. You know, many species find it difficult to work with neural networks. The multiple parallel processes can be challenging to visualize." Before Emma could respond, a deep rumble shook the station. The lights flickered, and several students stumbled. Emma grabbed a handrail, while Bright simply hovered, unaffected. "Don't worry," Bright chimed calmly. "That's just the station's adaptive architecture adjusting to the new semester's species mix. It happens every few days." They reached a junction where the metal walls gave way to what looked like living tissue. "This is where I leave you," Bright said. "Your block is straight ahead. The walls here are biomechanical. They help regulate atmosphere and temperature for different species. Just follow the blue lighting strips to your room." Emma thanked her new friend and continued alone. The living walls pulsed gently, and she could have sworn they changed color slightly as she passed. The air felt fresher here, more like Earth's. Finally, she reached room 4221. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a space that looked surprisingly normal. A bed, a desk, some storage units, and a window looking out into the star-filled void of space. Emma stepped inside, letting out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Welcome home," she whispered to herself, watching as distant ships moved like fireflies against the black. 3 weeks into her stay at Station Alpha 9, Emma's brain felt like it might explode. She trudged through the corridor after her advanced quantum mechanics class, her tablet filled with equations she barely understood. The professor, a being made of pure energy contained in a special suit, had spent 2 hours explaining concepts that apparently most alien species learned in their equivalent of elementary school. The station's lights had dimmed to simulate evening, though in space, day and night were just convenient fictions. Emma's eyes burned from staring at quantum probability charts all day. She hadn't slept well for the past few nights. The soft pulsing of the biomechanical walls still bothered her, even though the orientation guide had assured her humans would get used to it. As she walked, another tremor shook the station. These architectural adjustments were becoming more frequent. Emma steadied herself against a wall, waiting for it to pass. When it did, she noticed the usual blue guidance strips on the floor had changed to a deep purple. "Strange," she muttered, continuing toward what she thought was her room. The station's AI had been acting weird all day, giving contradictory directions to students and sometimes speaking in mixed-up languages. The maintenance crews, floating orbs of metallic gas, had been zooming around making repairs all afternoon. Emma reached what she thought was her door. The number looked right, 4221, though the digits seemed slightly blurry. She pressed her hand to the sensor, and to her surprise, it opened immediately. Usually, it took 2 or 3 tries. She stepped inside, already pulling off her study jacket. Then she froze. This wasn't her room. The space was much larger than her quarters, and instead of the standard furniture, the walls were covered in what looked like floating holograms of complex mathematical equations. They twisted and turned in 3-dimensional space, numbers and symbols dancing in patterns that made her head spin. In the center of the room, surrounded by at least 5 different hovering screens of data, stood another human. He hadn't noticed her yet, too absorbed in whatever he was doing. His hands moved through the air, manipulating the holographic symbols with practiced ease, while simultaneously typing on 3 different keyboards. Emma started to back away, but then she saw what was on one of the screens. It was the same quantum equation her class had struggled with all day, except this version had been solved. Not just solved, but expanded and taken to levels she didn't even know were possible. The human, she could now see it was a young man about her age, was muttering to himself as he worked. He reached out with one hand to adjust a floating diagram, while his other hand continued typing, and his foot was her foot tapping out commands on a floor-mounted control panel. "How are you doing that?" The words slipped out before she could stop them. The young man spun around, startled. The holograms flickered but didn't disappear. He looked at her with confusion, then understanding, then embarrassment. "Oh, this isn't your room, is it?" he said. "The station's been glitching all day. I'm Tom." "I'd shake your hand, but—" he gestured at the multiple interfaces he was still somehow managing. "I'm Emma. I'm sorry, I thought this was my room. But how are you managing all of that at once? And is that Professor Lightbeing's quantum equation?" Tom looked confused. "What do you mean?" "I'm just working on some basic problems. Nothing special. Though I did find some interesting extensions to the quantum theory the professor talked about. Did you know you can apply it to 11 dimensions instead of just the basic 7 they teach in class?" Emma stared at him. Basic problems. The equations floating around the room would give most graduate students on Earth a headache just looking at them. And he was doing it all simultaneously, as casually as someone might watch TV while checking their phone. Before she could respond, the station's AI crackled to life overhead. "Attention all students. Due to ongoing systems maintenance, please verify your room numbers. Several guidance systems are currently misaligned." But Emma barely heard it. She was too busy watching Tom effortlessly juggle multiple complex tasks in a way she had never seen anyone, human or alien, do before. Emma walked deeper into Tom's room, her eyes wide as she took in more details. Beyond the floating equations, she noticed something even more remarkable. In one corner, 3 different experiments were running simultaneously. One looked like a miniature gravity well, another appeared to be a quantum entanglement test, and the third, she wasn't even sure what it was, but it sparkled with tiny flashes of light. "Did you build all this yourself?" she asked, gesturing at the makeshift equipment. Tom nodded while still typing with one hand. The station's labs are always booked, and they don't let first-year students run multiple experiments at once. Something about safety protocols. He shrugged. "So I made my own setup. It's not pretty, but it works." Emma watched as he adjusted the quantum entanglement experiment with his foot while simultaneously solving a complex equation in the air and taking notes on a floating screen. "But how are you doing all of this at the same time? I can barely keep up with regular classwork." Tom finally stopped what he was doing and turned to face her fully. "Wait, what do you mean? Isn't this how you work too? I mean, we're human. This is just how our brains function, right?" Before Emma could answer, a soft chime announced someone at the door. It slid open to reveal Bright, the crystalline student she had met on her first day. The beam's purple glow dimmed significantly as it took in the scene. "By the galactic core," Bright chimed softly. Are you doing all of these calculations simultaneously?" "Well, yeah," Tom said, looking increasingly confused. "It's just basic multitasking. Nothing special." Bright floated further into the room, its crystal facets reflecting the holographic equations. "Basic. Human, Tom. Most species can only focus on one complex task at a time. Our neural pathways evolve for specialized, sequential processing. Even our most advanced quantum computers struggle with true parallel processing of abstract concepts." Emma felt her heart skip a beat as the implications sank in. She looked at the walls again, really looked at them. Among the swirling equations, she spotted solutions to problems that had been puzzling her class for weeks. But Tom hadn't just solved them. He'd expanded them, found new applications, and connected them to other theories in ways she never imagined possible. "Tom," she said slowly, "I don't think this is normal, even for humans. I mean, yes, we can multitask, but what you're doing here, it's extraordinary." Tom ran a hand through his hair, looking embarrassed. "But it's so simple. Look, take this quantum equation." He pointed to a particularly complex floating formula. "If you think about it in 11 dimensions while considering the temporal variations, you can see how it connects to basic string theory. Here, let me show you." He began manipulating the holograms again, his hands dancing through the air while he explained the concepts. Emma found herself following along, and to her surprise, it actually made sense. She hadn't been able to grasp these ideas in class, but watching Tom explain them while working on 3 other things somehow made them clearer. Bright's glow had intensified to an almost blinding purple. "This is unprecedented. The human brain's ability to process multiple complex abstract concepts simultaneously while maintaining physical coordination. Do you realize what this means? That I'm going to get in trouble for having unauthorized experiments in my room?" Tom asked nervously. "No," Bright chimed with excitement. "It means we've been approaching galactic science all wrong. The segmented, sequential way most species think has limited our progress. But humans, your brains work differently. You can see connections we miss, process information in ways we can't." Emma watched as Tom absent-mindedly adjusted one of his experiments with his foot while scratching calculations in the air with both hands. She had always thought humans were behind the other species in terms of scientific advancement. But maybe, just maybe, they had something unique to offer after all. A small alarm beeped from one of Tom's experiments. Without looking, he reached back and adjusted 3 different controls, still focusing on explaining a complex theory to Emma. Wright's crystal structure actually vibrated with excitement at the display. The galaxy, Emma realized, was about to learn something new about humans, and it had all started because she walked into the wrong room. News spread quickly through Station Alpha 9. By the next morning, Emma could feel eyes following her as she walked to class. Not just the usual curious glances at a human student, but intense stares of scientific interest. Even the floating maintenance orbs seemed to pause their repair work to watch her pass. In the quantum mechanics classroom, Professor Lightbeam's energy suit glowed brighter than usual when Emma and Tom walked in together. The professor had already pulled up Tom's expanded equations on the main display screen. "Class," the professor's translated voice hummed. "Today we will examine something remarkable. These solutions, developed by human student Tom, show us an entirely new way of approaching quantum mechanics." The alien students stirred with interest. A group of gas cloud beings clustered together, their colors swirling in what Emma had learned meant excitement. The spider-like students in the back row clicked their mandibles rapidly. "But sir," Tom said, looking uncomfortable with the attention, "I just did what seemed obvious. Anyone could see the connections if they looked at all the data at once." The room fell silent. Professor Lightbeam's suit actually flickered. "That's exactly the point, young human," the professor said. "We can't look at all the data at once. No known species can process multiple streams of complex information simultaneously. Watch." The professor activated a neural scanner at the front of the room. "Tom, please solve these 3 equations while monitoring these 2 experiments. The rest of the class will observe your brain activity." Tom shrugged and stepped forward. The holographic display lit up with a real-time scan of his brain as he worked. Emma gasped along with the rest of the class. Where alien brains typically showed activity in one focused area at a time, Tom's entire brain lit up with multiple activity centers all working together. "Remarkable," Professor Lightbeam exclaimed. "Now, Emma, would you try as well? I have a theory." Emma hesitated but stepped forward. She wasn't as good at math as Tom, but she could still multitask. As she worked on simpler problems while monitoring the experiments, her brain scan showed a similar pattern. Different areas working in parallel, though not as intensely as Tom's. "Just as I suspected," the professor hummed. "This is a general human trait, though some display it more strongly than others." "Emma, Tom, do all humans multitask like this?" "Well, yes," Emma said slowly. "We do it all the time. Watching entertainment while eating and chatting with friends. Driving vehicles while listening to music and planning our day. Even children play games while talking and watching their surroundings." The alien students made various sounds of amazement. A crystalline being like Bright raised a facet. "But how do you not get overwhelmed by all the input?" "I guess we just don't," Tom answered. "Our brains naturally filter and process multiple streams of information. It's like breathing. We don't think about it, we just do it." Professor Lightbeam's glow pulsed with excitement. "This explains so much. The human ability to make unexpected connections, to innovate in ways we never considered. Your brains aren't just processing sequentially like ours. They're running multiple parallel processes, seeing patterns we miss because we can only focus on one aspect at a time." Emma felt a mix of pride and embarrassment. All her life, she had assumed humans were behind the other species in terms of mental capabilities. Yet here was proof that human brains had their own unique strengths. "The implications are enormous," the professor continued. "Think of the advances we could make in quantum computing by studying how human brains handle parallel processing. The improvements in space navigation if we could apply human multitasking abilities to ship control systems." Tom raised his hand. "Professor, while you were talking, I thought of a way to apply this to the station's AI system. Would you like to see?" The professor's glow brightened even further. "Yes, please. Class, observe closely. We are witnessing the beginning of a new era in galactic science." Emma watched as Tom began explaining his idea, casually solving 2 more equations while he talked. She smiled, finally understanding that what humans had always taken for granted might just change the galaxy forever. The next few days on Station Alpha 9 were unlike anything Emma had expected. The station's main conference room, usually reserved for important Federation meetings, was now filled with curious scientists and researchers from every species. They had all come to see the humans who could do the impossible. Tom stood at the front of the room, working on 5 different projects simultaneously, while a dozen neural scanners recorded his brain activity. Emma sat in the front row, watching as the alien scientists muttered and took notes, their various appendages moving rapidly as they recorded their observations. Notice how the human maintains perfect coordination while engaging multiple cognitive processes, announced Dr. Voigt, a being of pure darkness who specialized in xenobiology. This shouldn't be possible according to our previous understanding of brain function. Emma felt a gentle tap on her shoulder. She turned to find Bright hovering beside her, glowing with a mix of purple and blue colors she had never seen before. The medical council is in an uproar, Bright chimed softly. They've been studying the data from your neural scans all night. Do you know what they found? Emma shook her head. Your brains don't just process multiple streams of information. They actually work better when handling multiple tasks. It's like your neural pathways become more efficient under complex loads. We've never seen anything like it. Up at the front, Tom was explaining how he had improved the station's navigation systems by applying human multitasking principles to the AI's processing cores. The maintenance orbs had implemented his changes that morning, and already the station's glitches had decreased by 60%. A tall, serpentine alien raised what Emma assumed was its hand. But isn't this ability dangerous? A mind that can process so much at once. The potential for chaos is enormous. The room grew quiet. Emma felt her heart sink. She had worried about this, that fear would follow their discovery. But then something unexpected happened. One of the spider-like students from her quantum mechanics class stepped forward. With respect, Director Slith, the student clicked. I've been studying alongside these humans for weeks. Their multitasking ability doesn't create chaos. It finds patterns in it. Yesterday, Human Tom helped me understand a quantum principle I've struggled with for years, simply because he could see connections I couldn't while working on 3 other problems. More students began speaking up. The gas cloud beings swirled with approval as they described how Emma had helped them with their projects. Even the crystalline students, usually so reserved, chimed in with positive observations. Dr. Voigt's darkness seemed to deepen thoughtfully. Perhaps this is exactly what galactic science has been missing. We've always approached problems one at a time, breaking them down into smaller and smaller pieces. But some problems require us to see the whole picture at once. That's what I've been trying to say. Tom called out, still working on his 5 projects. Look, I've just found a way to link the quantum entanglement principles to the station's power grid. If we apply this across all systems simultaneously, his hands flew through the air, manipulating multiple holographic displays at once. The room erupted in excited chatter as the implications became clear. Emma watched as fear turned to fascination, then to enthusiasm. The alien scientists weren't just studying human abilities anymore. They were starting to understand how to work with them. Bright pulsed with happiness beside her. You know what this means, don't you? Emma smiled. That humans aren't as behind in science as we thought. More than that, Bright chimed. It means the galaxy finally has what it's been missing. Minds that can see the big picture and the small details all at once. Do you realize how many problems we might solve now? How many breakthroughs we might make? As if to prove Bright's point, Tom's voice rose above the excited chatter. And if we apply this same principle to faster-than-light travel calculations, wait, let me show you something amazing. The room crowded forward eagerly. Emma felt a warmth in her chest as she watched humans and aliens beginning to work together, each bringing their unique strengths to the table. What had started as a simple wrong turn was turning into something that might change the galaxy forever. Word of the humans' abilities spread beyond Station Alpha 9, reaching the highest levels of the Galactic Federation. Not everyone was convinced. Some of the older, more traditional scientists demanded proof under controlled conditions. The High Council of Scientific Achievement decided to put human abilities to the test. Emma and Tom stood in the station's largest testing chamber, surrounded by the most advanced monitoring equipment in the galaxy. Observers from 100 different worlds packed the viewing galleries above. The air felt thick with tension. "The testing parameters are simple," announced Chief Examiner First Light of Dawn, a being that looked like a living aurora. "You will face a series of challenges designed to test the limits of your cognitive abilities. No other known species has passed all these tests. Are you ready?" Tom looked at Emma and grinned. "Ready as we'll ever be." "Just like studying for finals back on Earth, right?" Emma laughed nervously. "Yeah, except the whole galaxy is watching." The first test began. Holographic screens appeared around them, each showing different complex problems that had to be solved simultaneously. Emma took the left side, Tom the right. Their hands moved through the air, typing, calculating, and adjusting as needed. In the viewing gallery, Bright watched with other students from their class. "Look at their neural patterns." The crystalline being chimed excitedly. "They're not just solving the problems, they're improving the solutions as they work." The second test was harder. They had to pilot virtual spacecraft through complex obstacle courses while solving quantum equations and monitoring life support systems. Most species needed 3 pilots for such tasks. Emma and Tom each handled their ships alone. "Remarkable," muttered Dr. Void from his observation post. "They're not even showing signs of stress." The third test seemed impossible. The chamber filled with 100 different sounds, lights, and motion patterns. They had to track and respond to specific combinations while maintaining their other tasks. This test was designed to overload neural processors, First Light of Dawn explained to the audience. "Even our most advanced AI systems struggle with it." But Emma and Tom didn't struggle. Instead, they seemed to find a rhythm. Tom began humming an old Earth song as he worked, his feet tapping out response patterns while his hands managed the calculations. Emma found herself smiling as she coordinated her responses, remembering how she used to do homework while watching shows and texting friends. The final test was different. The chamber went dark except for a single floating orb of light. "This is the pattern," First Light of Dawn announced. "It contains every test you've done so far, plus 1,000 others, all happening at once. No one has ever seen the full pattern. Most species can only grasp tiny pieces of it." Emma and Tom stared at the orb. At first, it seemed chaotic, too complex to understand. But then, "Oh," Emma exclaimed, "it's like one of those 3D pictures from Earth. You know, where you have to unfocus your eyes to see the hidden image." Tom nodded excitedly. "Yes. And look, if you track all the patterns at once, they form a larger pattern, which forms an even larger pattern." Together, they began describing what they saw. The audience fell silent as the humans explained connections and relationships that had never been noticed before. The pattern wasn't chaos. It was countless smaller patterns working together to create something greater. First Light of Dawn's aurora-like form flickered with astonishment. "They can see it. They can actually see the whole pattern." "Not just see it," Dr. Void added, his darkness swirling with excitement. "They're finding new patterns within it. Connections we never imagined." In the viewing gallery, alien scientists frantically took notes as Emma and Tom continued their explanation. Bright's crystalline form glowed with pure joy. The tests weren't just about proving human abilities. Bright chimed to nearby students. "They've shown us a whole new way of seeing the universe, and this is just the beginning." Emma and Tom shared a quiet smile as they finished their explanation. They had done more than pass a test. They had shown the galaxy that humanity's greatest weakness was actually its greatest strength. 1 month after the tests, Station Alpha 9 had changed completely. The once rigid teaching methods had been replaced by new programs that took advantage of human cognitive abilities. Mixed species study groups filled every corner, with humans helping aliens understand complex patterns, while aliens shared their deep specialized knowledge. Emma stood by the giant observation window in the main hall, watching ships come and go. More human students had arrived from Earth, eager to join the program after news of the discovery spread. But what made her smile most was seeing how the station itself had changed. Tom's improvements to the AI system had done more than fix the glitches. By applying human multitasking principles to the station's computers, they had created something entirely new. An AI that could process multiple problems simultaneously, just like a human brain. Deep in thought, Bright's familiar chime made Emma turn. Her crystalline friend glowed with warm purple light. "Just thinking about how much has changed," Emma replied. "Remember when I got lost and ended up in Tom's room? The mistake that changed galactic science forever." Bright's crystal facets sparkled with amusement. "Have you seen the new ship designs? They're installing human-inspired control systems that let a single pilot handle tasks that used to need an entire crew." As if on cue, a sleek new vessel glided past the window. Its hull shimmered with the latest quantum pattern technology, another innovation born from combining human multitasking abilities with alien engineering. "Emma, Bright," Tom's voice called from down the hall. He jogged toward them, somehow managing to work on 3 different tablets while running. "The High Council just approved our proposal." "The education program?" Emma asked excitedly. "Yes, they're going to implement human-style multitask training across all Federation schools. Not to make other species think like us, but to help everyone work together better. The test results showed that even though aliens can't multitask like humans, working with us helps them see patterns they missed before." Professor Lightbeing drifted over, their energy suit glowing with pride. "And that's not all. The Medical Council's latest research shows that human neural patterns are helping us understand consciousness itself in new ways. We thought our sequential processing was the only way to achieve intelligence. You humans have proven there are other paths." Emma watched as more students filled the hall. A group of gas cloud beings worked with a human student on a complex project, their colors swirling with excitement as they made new connections. Nearby, spider-like aliens clicked happily as another human helped them understand a difficult concept by relating it to 3 other ideas at once. "You know what makes me happiest?" Emma said softly. "Nobody's afraid anymore. That first week after the discovery, I worried some would see us as a threat." "Threat?" Bright chimed with laughter. "You humans don't take over problems. You help us see them in new ways. Your gift isn't just doing many things at once. It's showing us how everything connects." Tom nodded, still working on his tablets. "It's like that old Earth saying, 'The whole is greater than the sum of its parts.' We're all better when we work together." The station trembled slightly, but this time it wasn't a glitch. The adaptive architecture was expanding to accommodate new research labs and living quarters. Earth had approved sending hundreds more human students, and other species were eagerly preparing to welcome them. "To think," Emma mused, watching the stars beyond the window, "all of this happened because I walked into the wrong room." "Wrong room, right discovery," Professor Lightbeing hummed. "Sometimes the greatest breakthroughs come from unexpected places. Just like how humans achieved faster than light travel by seeing patterns no one else could find." Emma smiled as she saw a group of new human students being led down the hall, their eyes wide with wonder. They had no idea yet how their natural abilities would help shape the galaxy's future. She remembered feeling the same way on her first day, lost and unsure. But now she knew better. Humans weren't behind the other species. They were just different. And in those differences lay the key to understanding the universe in wonderful new ways. "Come on," she said to her friends. "Let's go help the new students settle in. After all, you never know which wrong turn might lead to the next great discovery."